Gavin Newsom in Oregon smacks down Donald Trump in court after he tries to mobilize the California National Guard. I'll lay out the full timeline of events for y'all, but first, just a quick reminder, hit that subscribe button and enable notifications. It really helps us bring you more stories like this. This is Kameron Williams, and welcome to Pragmotiv News. So Portland has become one of Donald Trump's favorite punching bags whenever he wants to talk about Democrat-run anarchy. In late September 2025, protests reignited around immigration enforcement and ICE operations downtown, mostly peaceful and definitely not a war zone. Still, the president decided to start describing Portland as a, quote, war-torn hellhole and claimed federal property was under siege. So Trump announced his plan to deploy 200 Oregon National Guard members on the streets of Portland. The problem is Oregon didn't ask for his help. So they sued him. And their argument was simple. The president doesn't get to federalize the state's National Guard unless there's an actual rebellion or insurrection. It's federal law under the Insurrection Act, if I could say that correctly, and the Posse Comitatus Act. Now, U.S. District Judge Karin Immergut, ironically a Trump appointee, on October 4th, 2025, issued a temporary restraining order, or TRO, blocking the deployment. Her reasoning was there was no emergency. Portland wasn't in open rebellion, and the president doesn't get to use military force for domestic policing just because he's mad at a city. This isn't Call of Duty, bro. You can't just drop troops into Oregon because you don't like how the governor or mayor is running things. But the White House wasn't done being stupid. The very next day, October 5th, administration officials floated a creative little workaround. If they couldn't federalize Oregon's National Guard, they just sent troops from California or maybe Texas. And y'all know Hot Wheels was all too eager to please his daddy Trump. So he tweeted this. I fully authorize the president to call up 400 members of the Texas National Guard to ensure safety for federal workers. You can either fully enforce protection or federal employees or get out of the way and let Texas Guard do it. No guard can match the training, skill, and expertise of the Texas National Guard. They defend our country with pride. Well, Wills, I don't believe you have the authority to do that. So, Oregon and California rushed back to court, this time joined by the city of Portland, arguing the administration was deliberately evading the judge's order. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time they've done that. And the judge agreed, prompting the tweet from Gavin Newsom. Breaking. We just won in court again. A federal judge blocked Donald Trump's unlawful attempt to deploy 300 of our National Guard troops to Portland. The court granted our request for a temporary restraining order, halting any federalization, relocation, or deployment of any Guard members to Oregon from any state. Trump's abuse of power won't stand. The thing is that it's all fine, well, and good that he keeps losing in court. But I see what the transparent bastard is doing. He's testing the waters to see what he can get away with. We must turn out and vote in every election because between now and 2029, because he and the Republicans in every position from state and local to federal, all the way up to the presidency, they got to go because they are trying to turn this into a authoritarian state, and you don't want to live in that. I don't see how Republicans who voted for this are happy with this, because if liberals don't have rights, y'all won't. So late that same night, she issued a second restraining order, even broader than the first. It barred the federal government from deploying any National Guard troops from any state into Oregon without state consent. In her ruling, she called out what she described as a whack-a-mole strategy to sidestep the law. What I would have said is, nice try, little bitch. It's still illegal. I guess that's why I ain't a judge. The judge extended the block for 14 days, pending a full hearing scheduled for October 17th. Meanwhile, the administration was still trying to be defiant, so the Justice Department filed for an emergency stay, basically asking the judge to pause her own order while they appealed. Judge Immergut said no. Again. Then she ruled there was no new evidence, no new threat, and no legal basis to override her injunction. Judge Immergut grilled Trump admin attorney, Mr. Hamilton, or she said, quote, Mr. Hamilton, you are an officer of the court. Aren't the defendants simply circumventing my order? Immergut said. So, what is this really about? Because it's not just Portland. It's the question of whether a president can weaponize the National Guard for political theater. The Constitution splits power for a reason. States control their National Guard unless the nation faces an insurrection or invasion. Trump's move tried to flip that dynamic, arguing that that protecting federal property was reason enough to override state authority. But federal judges, even Trump-appointed ones, are seeing that for what it is, a political stunt dressed up as national security. It's also a test of whether institutions still work when the executive branch decides to ignore the rule of law. Because here's the kicker. The administration kept signaling it might move forward with the deployments anyway, basically daring the court to stop them. That's not a normal policy dispute. This is a constitutional crisis in slow motion. This sets a precedent that is very damaging to our country. What everyone needs to know is setting a precedent for something shouldn't be taken lightly. Roe v. Wade wasn't a law. It was a legal precedent. That's why we can't ignore the precedent being set here. If a president can define emergency, if a president can redefine emergency whenever politically convenient, then the guardrails of federal power become optional. Those guardrails exist for a reason. They stop presidents, Democratic or Republican, from turning domestic policy into military policy. Because once you normalize troops on American streets, it doesn't stop at Portland. As of now, the restraining order remains in place. The October 17th hearing will determine whether it becomes a longer injunction or if the administration somehow convinces the court to let them move forward. Meanwhile, Oregon's leadership says they'll resist any deployment, even threatening to sue individual federal officers if they cross state lines without authorization. So at the end of the day, this isn't just about one city. It's about who gets to decide where military belongs. And if history is any guide, it's not supposed to be policing our own citizens. That's all for now. Like, comment, subscribe, and follow at Pragmotiv News everywhere to stay pragmotivated. Also, remember you can find us across major platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, and iHeartRadio so that you can listen to us even when you're on the go. So head on over there now and follow us and leave a review. It really helps us out. Until next time, peace.